And the dumb thing is that this correction curve I created 3 years ago worked fine for 2 years. So something happened in my computer. Maybe I deleted the wrong file or something. I don't know, because I had a few different curves in there. But I don't even want to think about it at this point. I don't know if I fixed it and it works fine now.
What does the negative look like that is printing out of that printer? What is it made of? What is the physical
I should
material?
have brought one.
Yeah.
The material looks like overhead transparency.
Okay.
It's clear.
Like a cellular.
It's almost perfectly transparent. Very slightly milky tone to it,
Okay.
because there's a coating on one side that's made to receive ink.
Okay.
So it's made for printers like the Epson 3800.
And then when you make the contact, do you have to worry about things like dust specks and things
Yep.
like that? And is there
Yeah.
any kind of way of retouching those?
No, I mean essentially
No
what I do.
spot tone or anything?
No, I mean the nice thing is that if when I scan my negatives, if I have any scratches or dust spots, I correct them all in the file.
Okay.
I output this new negative, and the negative itself is perfect.
Right.
And I mean it's literally to the point where when I'm printing negatives, if it's this time of year, I make sure my furnace is turned off. I don't want any dust blowing around the house, that sort of thing. And it surprisingly has not been that big of an issue.
There's not a lot of static on it, or
No, we live in a humid environment, which works to our advantage too. And it's also an advantage of platinum printing, because a humid environment. To make platinum prints, you need about 50% humidity, which we generally always have here. So it's not a big deal. I've heard of people with real problems in working in drier climates. But I just have to be careful when I use the negative, because this digital negative I make now is, because these are all contact prints, this is the size of the actual negative. So part of the reason I like it is that I can make the negative any size I want. I can make bigger, smaller, whatever. I'm not restricted to a certain size. And I just have to be careful when I go to make my print. I carefully look at the negative, I inspect it to make sure there's no dust on it, no marks or anything. And occasionally it happens where I do the whole thing, make my print, and I pour the developer on it, and I look at it, and there's a little weird mark on it, and I go look at the negative, oh yeah, there it is. So it happens occasionally, but I try to be as meticulous as I can.
how toxic is the chemistry? Do you need special ventilation or anything?
No, no. Most of what I use comes in liquid form. There's one component, when I coat the paper, and I'll take a step back actually, this is the platinum print.
Is that exhibition fiber? What is it?
It's nothing, it's not digital paper. The paper I use is essentially, this is called Arches Platine. Arches makes all kinds of artist paper, watercolor paper. It's essentially a cotton rag paper. This one has been made by Arches for alternative process printing, in that there's a coating on one side which tends to hold the emulsion nicely. So, but it's completely acid-free, it's archival, Arches Platine is a beautiful paper for this process. It gives a very nice contrast, you get nice rich blacks with it. Because platinum printing is a low contrast process. It's not like making a glossy black and white print on an Epson printer. But essentially, I have an emulsion that I mix up that contains platinum and palladium. My prints actually have no platinum in them. I use just palladium, because palladium gives the warmest tone, which I really like. So I'm mixing palladium with ferric oxalate, which is what makes the emulsion sensitive to light, or UV light. So I paint the emulsion on, which is what the black is. And when I paint it on, it's sort of a yellowy orange color. That's the ferric oxalate. And then the negative goes on top of it into a contact printing frame. Whole thing goes into a UV light box, which I built. Just contains fluorescent light tubes that are essentially black light, so they have a high UV content. And expose the print. In my case, part of the whole digital negative creating this custom curve is that it's a nice way to work also, because in the computer I get the file looking the way I want. And unlike using true negatives to make contact prints, the exposure time is the same. So in my UV light box, my magic time is 6 minutes. So every print gets 6 minutes. I don't have to fart around doing test strips and so forth. I do a bunch of upfront testing, but then it's consistent after that. So, and then once you've exposed the print, essentially platinum prints are, you literally pour the developer, which is potassium oxalate, onto the print, and it comes up immediately. Within 10 seconds, the image is there. Within 5 seconds. I give it about a minute soak, and then it's a matter of clearing the excess ferric oxalate off the print in a series of clearing baths. First bath is citric acid, which is no big deal to work with. and then 2 baths of Kodak hypo clearing agent. So nothing is really bad to work with. The potassium oxalate developer you don't want to drink, it will poison you, but there's no harmful fumes or anything. The ferric oxalate I mix up from a powder, and the powder is bad stuff. So technically, when you're mixing the powder, you should be wearing a mask, and I tend to do this, which is really stupid. So far I find that I have no side effects from doing it.
And it's reusable, right, the developer?
It is, yeah. The developer never actually goes bad. I mean, I have to replenish it just from some soaking in the paper and so forth, but.
So why is it called platinum? Why is it called, the process called platinum?
Because the two components of the emulsion that goes on the paper are platinum and palladium metals. So, like I said, my prints actually don't have platinum, they're just palladium, but the term platinum applies to any combination thereof. Either all platinum, all palladium, I mix of both. And pure palladium prints are quite common now.
Is there a platinum palladium process that works under conventional darkroom light through an enlarger instead of just UV? Or is it all with UV?
It's only UV, because the ferric oxalate, which is the sensitizer, is only sensitive to UV light. So
Is it standard for all palladium or platinum type of printing?
Yeah, I don't know of anything else besides that.
Did you go to see Linda Eastman's prints at the museum 3 years ago?
No, I didn't.
Rock stars and what have you. They were all platinum prints, and some of them were huge.
Yeah.
So were they contact prints?
Yep.
They were contact prints.
Yeah, I mean, the limitation for me in making prints, the size of the prints, is I'm limited by the size of my UV exposure box, which is 24 inches by 24, and then my contact printing frame is 16 by 20, is the biggest piece of paper I can put in it. So by the time you count the image with a little bit of overlap, the biggest image I can make is about 15 by 18 or 15 by 19 inches. But if I wanted to build a bigger UV box and use bigger trays, I could make a print any size I want. So I kind of made the decision that that's about as big as I'm going to go for now.
Do you know of a UV light source that can be put into an enlarger?
I don't know of one, but I don't see why, if you could find a bulb that puts out UV light, but you would have extremely long exposure times, like ridiculously long. Because my UV box is 24 by 24, and I have 6 fluorescent light ballasts in there, and each ballast has 2 tubes, and they're about that far from each other. So it's a bank of lights that is extremely bright in there. And then even then, my exposure time is 6 minutes. So I would suspect that if you put a UV bulb into an enlarger, you'd be exposing for an hour or something like that.
Do you still have to use a fixer or something?
No. And that's the other thing, platinum prints, a nice, aside to it is that they are the most permanent form of photograph in existence. Because of the metals involved, which are now literally into the fibers of the paper, they don't fade, which is why I didn't put glass in front of these images. I can't stand glass in front of photographs. I mean, it's a necessary evil. But unless I've got a platinum print hanging in my bathroom and I've got glass in front of it because it's a humid environment. But otherwise, I don't feel a need to put glass in front of them because they won't fade from the sunlight. Sure, they could be susceptible to environmental damage, I suppose, but they won't actually fade.
I have to ask, when you dispose of these metals, is there a way to do that that's environmentally friendly?
There's no disposal of them because I'm using them all. The only thing that goes down the drain, the residue in my trays that's left over is my clearing bath will start to turn slightly yellow from the residue of ferric oxalate is the only thing. And I honestly don't know what, if any, issues there are with ferric oxalate in the environment. But the platinum and palladium are all in the image, and they're used by it. So it's kind of nice that way. There's no fixer.
Right, there's no silver that has to be removed.
There's no silver to reclaim or anything like that. It's a different process altogether. And in terms of safety and so forth, like I said, the worst part about this is mixing up the ferric oxalate. And you can also buy it in liquid form if you want, but I just mix it myself. Other than that, it's simply a matter of the potassium oxalate developer. You don't want to ingest it. And they recommend if you don't want to soak your hands in it for a long period of time, but it's not particularly dangerous for you in terms of odor or contact.
All your components can be got from lens and shutter?
Nothing can be bought locally. No, everything I buy has to come from the US. The only thing I can get here is citric acid, which is twice the price I pay from the US. So I buy it all. There's one place in the US called Bostic and Sullivan who specialize in alternative process photography, and they sell all this stuff, and I order from them.
What's it called again?
Bostic and Sullivan.
Bostic?
Yeah.
And Sullivan.
And they have everything there, and I just order it from them. And that's a disadvantage to this, because it is a specialized type of printing. I can't find any of this stuff locally. And like I said, I even buy my citric acid from them because it's half the price of what I pay here. So I tend to buy in big batches. I kind of once a year I'll place an order and ship it up because they charge an arm and a leg for shipping. And even the paper, it was only recently, well actually I still can't find platine here. Art World and Herald's told me they can get platine, and I ordered some about 3 months ago and it still hasn't come in yet. So there's a place in Toronto that does sell it, and or Ottawa actually, Wallach's Art Supply. They have it.
Where is
Daniel
it
Smith
made?
is good.
Is it European?
Yeah.
Daniel Smith is a really good source for
And
tea.
is that in
They-
Toronto?
It's in Seattle,
Oh,
that's right, yeah.
and they often have 30% off sales and things of that nature.
I've heard about them, and I completely forgot about them. Yeah.
They ship it up. It's not very expensive, at least the last time I bought platine from them.
Yeah.
Box came, 30 sheets in it.
Yeah, because I find buying the paper is a pain because generally it comes in very large sheets. So you're having to ship this big, large box.
is it European made paper? Is that why it's difficult?
Yeah, it is made in France, ultimately. So, and there's a few other papers out there as well that you can buy from Bostic and Sullivan. I mean, the nicest paper I've ever used, besides platine, is called made by a company called Berger. The paper is called Cot 320, and it's a really nice paper. It's extremely expensive, but it's the most perfect paper in terms of being free from blemishes and defects, and they seem to make it once every 73 years. So I can't.
So
get
what
it
does a
right
sheet cost of platine?
now.
I mean, what does it cost you to make one of these prints, from beginning to end?
My bare costs for a print like, a smaller print like this, I've worked out to be between $15 and $20 actual art cost, between a piece of Pictorico for the negative, ink for that negative, this piece of paper for the stuff, my chemistry. It's not cheap, no. And that's another reason why I haven't made a lot of large prints. As an experiment, I tried making the biggest print I could, which was around 15 by 18 inches. And when the palladium and ferric oxalate mixture I use comes in a little bottle with an eyedropper, and you're literally counting out drops of this stuff. And all of a sudden I realized, I just used 1/8 of my bottle in this one print. So to be blunt, I mean, unless I know someone's going to buy that print, I'm not going to make a really huge print because I can't afford it.